Hey everyone! If you're an Indian engineering student dreaming of a master's degree in Germany, I know exactly what's standing between you and that acceptance letter. You've got the ambition, right? And you've already survived the absolutely grueling 8 semesters of your BTech degree. But then you look at the admission requirements for a top German university, and you see 4 terrifying letters: ECTS. You're probably sitting there wondering how on earth your Indian CGPA or your AICTS credits actually fit into this European model. Well, don't panic. As someone who helps Indian students navigate German higher education, I've got you covered. In today's explainer, we're going to completely demystify these German ECTS requirements so you can apply with absolute confidence.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the German ECTS system, then compare Indian versus German credits, look at converting your engineering degree, walk through one practical conversion example, and finally, I'll show you a totally free ECTS calculator. Let's get into it. Starting right off with Section 1, the German ECTS system.
So what exactly does this mysterious European acronym actually stand for? ECTS is the European Credit Transfer and Accumulation System. It's basically the gold standard used all across Europe, including Germany, to measure a student's total workload. And honestly, that word right there, workload, is the absolutely vital piece of this puzzle. To succeed in your applications, we really need to shift your mindset away from our traditional Indian system's focus on pure academic performance and test scores. ECTS doesn't just care about your final grade. It measures the sheer volume of learning you've done. This includes your time in lectures, your seminars, your final year projects, your independent self-study at home, and even your exam prep. You see, in Germany, higher education relies heavily on independent research, which is exactly why this system meticulously tracks the sheer volume of hours you dedicate outside the lecture hall.
Moving right along to Section 2, Indian versus German credits. So there is a pretty stark contrast between our two educational cultures. Back home, in Indian universities, while you do have a credit system overseen by bodies like the UGC or AICTE, your academic life is ultimately assessed and rewarded based on performance. It's all about your marks, your percentages, or your final CGPA. German universities, on the other hand, assess the volume of your learning via ECTS. In the German system, one single ECTS universally equals 25 to 30 hours of total study time. So while your Indian transcripts emphasize how well you scored, the ECTS system is tracking the exact number of hours you invested to make sure you have the foundational depth required for a rigorous master's program. Which brings us to Section 3, converting your engineering degree. 60. This is your golden rule. In the German higher education space, one full academic year of study universally equals exactly 60 ECTS credits. You're definitely going to want to keep this number anchored in your mind because it literally forms the basis for your entire degree conversion. And this brings us to some really fantastic news. Let's look at how your specific Indian degree maps out globally. If you did a standard 3-year bachelor's degree, that multiplies out to 180 ECTS. But for the vast majority of you Indian engineering students holding a 4-year BTech or BE degree, you naturally map out to 240 ECTS. You can take a collective sigh of relief right now, seriously. Most master's programs in Germany require a baseline of 180 to 210 ECTS for admission. Because you have a 4-year degree yielding 240 ECTS, you are well above the overall requirement. However, don't celebrate just yet, because your total degree credits are just the first hurdle. Let's dive into the details with Section 4, one practical conversion example. Okay, so the crucial point is this. Admission teams at top universities, like the TU9 for instance, don't just look at your 240 total credits, no way. They heavily scrutinize your transcript for specific core engineering subjects. They might say, we need 15 ECTS specifically in advanced mathematics. Now, as one of our sources points out, and this is a great pro tip, even if you don't have enough ECTS in maths, try to find out some other subjects like theory of structures. If your Indian transcript just lists engineering mathematics I and II and falls short of the required hours, you've got to be strategic. Look at your applied mechanics, your thermodynamics, or theory of structures courses. Those involve heavy mathematical applications. You absolutely must calculate the ECTS for those individual courses to prove to the German university that you need their strict subject-specific requirements. To do that, we use a very specific formula. Let's walk through the logical, step-by-step math you need to convert any single class on your engineering transcript into ECTS. Step 1. Find your lecture hours per week from your university syllabus. Step 2. Add your self-study hours per week. Now, a really good rule of thumb for Indian degrees is that your self-study hours often equal your lecture hours, mostly because you spend just as much time at home doing assignments, writing records, and prepping for those tough university exams. Step 3. Multiply that combined weekly number by the total weeks in a semester, which is usually about 16 weeks or 4 months. Finally, step 4. Divide those total calculated hours by 30, because as we just learned, 1 ECTS equals 30 hours of study.
Let's see how this actually builds into a real-world scenario with a concrete example from an engineering transcript. Imagine you took a core course, let's call it Engineering 525. You had 3 lecture hours per week, you had 3 self-study hours per week. That gives you 6 hours of total work per week. You multiply that by a standard 16-week semester, which yields 96 total hours invested into this one subject. Finally, you divide 96 by 30. The result? That single class yields exactly 3.2 ECTS. When you apply to a German university, you'll be asked to fill out a curricular analysis form doing this exact same math for dozens of your subjects. And that leads us perfectly into Section 5, the free ECTS calculator.
As an expert helping students exactly like you navigate this process, I always recommend working smarter, not harder. Instead of crunching these numbers by hand for 40 to 50 different BTech subjects, you can actually completely automate the math. Just plug in your lecture hours, your self-study hours, and your semester weeks, and this tool instantly spits out your exact ECTS equivalent. I highly suggest you bookmark this free tool right now at connecting-dreams.com/ECTS calculator. Trust me on this one, it will save you literally hours of frustration and make your German university applications infinitely smoother.
Well, we've covered a ton of ground today, right? From understanding the workload mindset of Europe to mathematically converting your Indian BTech subjects. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. You clearly have the engineering grades, and you absolutely have the drive to study abroad. But are your transcript-specific credits correctly converted and ready for Germany? Don't let a simple misunderstanding of a credit system hold you back from your goals. Grab your transcripts, head over to that calculator, and finally bridge the gap to your dream university. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I wish you the absolute best of luck